Picture this. It's Saturday morning. The sun is doing its absolute best outside. Someone has texted you, maybe a friend, maybe your cousin, asking if you want to come out, grab some food, hang around people, just be out there in the world. And you read that message. You think about it for a genuinely reasonable 3 seconds. And then you set your phone face down, pull your blanket a little tighter, and go back to whatever you were watching. No guilt, no FOMO, just peace. If you're a Gen X man, there's a solid chance that scenario doesn't just sound familiar, it sounds ideal. And the world, bless its heart, has a lot of opinions about that. They call you antisocial. They say you're depressed or lazy or that you've given up. But here's what the psychology actually says, and it's a lot more interesting than any of those labels. You haven't given up on the world. You've just figured out something most people spend their whole lives chasing, and you found it on your couch. Let's talk about why. Gen X men, that generation born roughly between 1965 and 1980, grew up in a unique psychological environment. These were the latchkey kids, the ones who came home to an empty house, made their own snacks, watched 3 hours of television with zero supervision, and figured out how to be alone before anyone taught them it was supposed to be scary. Psychologists call this self-directed autonomy, and it's not a small thing. When your brain learns early that solitude is manageable, that you don't need constant external stimulation to feel okay, it builds a nervous system that actually prefers quiet. That's not a flaw in the wiring. That's an adaptation that worked, and it stuck. Now, layer on top of that the particular exhaustion of being a Gen X adult in the modern world. This generation has been quietly holding things together for decades. Careers, families, aging parents, the general chaos of watching the world move at a speed that frankly nobody signed up for. By the time the weekend rolls around, the idea of going out, of performing social ease, navigating noise and crowds and small talk about things that don't matter, that doesn't sound like fun. It sounds like overtime. There's a concept in psychology called ego depletion, the idea that willpower and social energy are finite resources. You spend them throughout the day, and at some point, the tank is genuinely empty. Research by Roy Baumeister and his colleagues showed that the more decisions and social interactions we navigate, the less mental fuel we have left. For Gen X men who've been decision-making since they were 10 years old and largely doing it alone, that tank empties faster, and the home becomes the only place where the meter actually refills. Home isn't avoidance. Home is the charger. There's also something happening neurologically that deserves some respect. Introverts, and Gen X trends heavily introvert, though nobody called it that back then, process dopamine differently. Where an extrovert gets an energy spike from a crowded room, an introvert's brain can actually experience overstimulation from the same environment. The noise, the social cues to read, the performance of being on, all of it registers not as excitement, but as low-grade stress. The home environment removes those stressors. Your brain, smart thing that it is, has learned where it feels safe. It is not being dramatic. Now, here's where it gets philosophically interesting. There's a concept that the Japanese call hikikomori, though in its extreme clinical form, it describes social withdrawal as a disorder. But there's a softer Western cousin to that idea, what some researchers are now calling voluntary solitude, the deliberate, conscious choice to withdraw from social life, not because of fear or dysfunction, but because of preference and self-knowledge. Studies on this, including work published in the Journal of Personality, found that people who choose solitude intentionally, who aren't lonely, just alone, report significantly higher levels of creative thinking, emotional clarity, and even life satisfaction than those who socialize out of obligation. Read that again. Intentional solitude, higher life satisfaction. The Gen X man on his couch may actually be on to something ancient and wise that the productivity culture crowd hasn't caught up to yet. And let's not ignore the cultural context here.
Gen X men grew up before the internet made staying home feel like a lifestyle. They stayed home because they wanted to. With their record collections, their books, their projects in the garage, their inner worlds that they'd learned to furnish well. That's not loneliness, that's richness. The home became a third space, not work, not the social obligation of the outside world, but a genuine sanctuary built around what actually brings them joy. The stereotype says Gen X men who don't leave the house are checked out. The reality is often the opposite. They're deeply checked in to their own rhythms, their own preferences, their own sense of what a good Saturday actually feels like. They stopped performing contentment for other people and started just having it. That's a hard thing to earn. Most people never manage it. So if this is you, if you've built a life that revolves around your home, your quiet, your deliberate solitude, maybe the question isn't what's wrong with you. Maybe the question is, what did you figure out that the always on, always out crowd is still running toward and somehow missing? The world will always have somewhere for you to be. Your home will always know who you actually are. Leave a comment below. I want to know, is your home your sanctuary too? And if this one landed, stick around. There's a lot more of this where it came from.